Welcome back to Beyond the Reformer. This week's episode feels like such a special one to me, and honestly, it's a bit of a pinch me moment. When I first started this podcast, I made a bit of a wish list of people I'd love to interview one day. And at the top of that list was Michael King. Michael has been teaching Pilates for 47 years, and he was one of the very first people to teach here in the UK. He's quite literally seen it all, from the early days when Pilates was a one studio in London to the global movement it's become today. He's not only witnessed that evolution, he's helped to shape it. I met Michael at the Pilates Gathering in Stirling, Scotland, and he could not have been more warm or welcoming. We ended up having this incredible in-person conversation about his story, his philosophy, and how Pilates has changed, and how in some ways it's also stayed the same over nearly 5 decades of his teaching. What I love about Michael is that he's this total powerhouse of knowledge and history in our industry, and yet he's also one of the most genuine and generous people that you could ever meet. We talked about everything from the legacy of Joseph Pilates and the elders to the importance of staying true to yourself as a teacher, even as the industry keeps evolving. I left our conversation feeling inspired, grateful, and honestly, like I could have talked to him for hours. He had so many interesting tidbits to share. So wherever you're listening from today, whether you're a teacher, a trainee teacher, a studio owner, or someone who just loves Pilates, I know you're going to take so much from this episode and hearing what the last almost 50 years has been like in the world of Pilates. So let's dive into my conversation with the incredible Michael King, recorded live at the Pilates Gathering. Michael, it is so wonderful to have you here on the podcast. We are at the Pilates Gathering in Stirling. This is a lovely event. I've never been here before.
It is a lovely event, and it's lovely weather, which is even more surprising.
Weather is glorious. Yeah. Blue skies. I was out exploring yesterday. What a beautiful part of the world. And actually, for me coming up from Bristol, super easy to fly up here and get up here. You've been in the Pilates world for 45 years, is that right? And not many people can say that. When you look back at the industry and where it started, what's the biggest shift that surprised you?
Well, there's more of it now. It's actually 47 years now, because I keep forgetting to up the years. Another year comes by, plus another added a year. When I first started, there wasn't much Pilates out there. I trained with Alan Herman, who was the man that brought Pilates into the UK. I was at dance school. We had to do Pilates, and none of us liked it because we were young. We wanted to dance, and then I hurt my back, and then I understood what Pilates was. So I went to work for Alan. I managed his studio, and it was great. It was always busy. Even if there was less of us, we were all really busy.
Where was his studio?
Yeah, his original studio was in a place called Homer Row, which is Paddington, basically. Okay. And it was a big church hall. He always tells the story like on Pilates Anytime, and I've heard it so many times, that he only hired us to paint his studio. Somewhere along the line we got roped in as teacher. But I was with a wonderful person, there was myself and Julian Littleford, who went on to be quite a Pilates person. He was a great dancer. And we were working for Alan and managing his studio when he pulled away from the dance school. Because as I say, the place, the London School of Contemporary Dance, is the ones that sent him over. And as he tells the story, they said to him, "We don't know what it is, but we think it might be quite good for the dancers." And that's how he finished up here in the UK permanently, because in the 60s, there was Pilates teachers coming in from New York, working with Ballet Rambert. So there was Pilates before Alan, but Alan was the first person to bring it into the country.
As a Pilates as such.
As a British person, opening the studio and really.
And what did it look like then? What did that studio look like? Who was coming to it?
It was a big studio, and currently his studio is also still in Paddington, one of his studios. Myself, we just opened a new one in Islington. It's a lot of apparatus, and it's much more, I hate to say the word circuit because that gives it kind of a fitness feeling, but it's much more of there's a group of people doing different exercises. And that's what I would call a more traditional style. And so when you've got all the pieces, the chair, the Cadillac, the reformer, of course, then you've got more options on movements. I mean, I love group reformer. I have a group reformer studio in London, South Kensington, and I love it. Although when I was asked to open it, I said I want towers on the end. I'm not going to do it with just a reformer. Because when you've got more pieces, you've got more movements.
Yeah.
And so you can adapt a lot more. We do tower reformer, we do tower mat, we do pure reformer, we do different programming. And I think then you can get the right person into the right class. I think that's what it's all about. I mean, this explosion in group reformer is great, but it's been challenging. And what we've seen with our studio in London, it's all the younger, the 25s coming in. It's brought a whole new generation to Pilates, where it's not the typical older client that's got a back problem or neck problem, you know, so it has opened the door. The challenges, of course, is learning to teach. That has always been the challenge. I mean, looking back on Alan, we had to watch for 200 hours of him teaching before we were allowed to assist. I mean, this is before the courses. So it was much more of an apprenticeship system. And it was great because you were there with him working, you learned, you listened to him talk, you were with clients. So it was much more on the, and I think that's a great opportunity for reformer studios. If you're going to be the owner of a reformer studio, to really, you know, look at the kind of an apprenticeship system and to improve your teachers as such.
That's what we've tried to do. I run a comprehensive course, and because I remember so vividly coming out of a course and then being met with real people who, you know, whilst you're working with real people on your course, they're usually people who are, well, they're becoming Pilates teachers. So they've usually done a good bit of work in themselves already. It's quite eye-opening. I always think you learn so much more from your clients. So
clients will teach you more than any course.
Yeah, which is why the apprenticeship model works. It's just it's that challenge, isn't it, of finding a way that it works within people's lives, that, you know, they're often working and maybe looking to shift careers.
I would say in a perfect world, of course, yes. But then you have to use what you've learned. And if you can be watched or helped or supported or mentored, whatever you want to say, that's going to give you more confidence. I think, you know, before the pandemic, I did nothing online. Pandemic came, we did everything online, and we learned how to use it. I remember it was a disaster at the beginning. All I could see was like big feet and other parts of the body on the screen. I'm like, could you just back off a little bit? You know, I think this is never going to work. But over the years, we now have our courses. They come and do face-to-face, but then in between, they come and do the online classes with us. They're live classes. And so I see the teachers and I can correct them. And I think that's brought a whole new support system for teachers. Because it's difficult on a course. You go for the weekend, you leave, you set tasks, homework or whatever. And I think it's really challenging for people then to go sometimes back to their normal life, which might be another job, and then somehow make it work. And I think there's a lot of pressure on that.
That's a really nice idea, actually. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, the in-person weekends are so powerful, but how do we support people in between? Because I see that. I see people who go and do their hundreds of hours of apprenticeship teaching, but no one's ever watched them do it.
No, well, this is what I don't agree with. There's some company, quite a large company, they do that. But I'm like, no. You need to have feedback.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, because of laws and things like that, you know, in Greece, it was a little bit more relaxed, the studio there. I had a camera, so I was watching the teachers as I was working. And for one time, I was like, oh, the camera must have broken, because people were stood like for 15 minutes. And I was like, oh, it must be broken. So I was shaking the camera and then suddenly realized the camera wasn't broken. The teacher was stood talking. And so everyone was like stood rigid for like 15 minutes. So I would have missed that. If I hadn't seen that teacher do that, I wouldn't know. And when I asked her, I said, what were you doing? And she says, well, I want to explain everything. I said, but it's really hard for people to stand still for 15 minutes while you're telling them everything. That's hard on the body. My passion is education. And if I could teach you everything in a day, of course I would, but it's impossible. So you have to see education or CPD. CPD is incredible because it's not this thing I have to do. It's this thing that's going to give you more information. You know, I'm on 47 years, I'm still learning because they keep changing things. Yeah. And with research and everything coming out, especially the fashion stuff, it's like amazing when you go and learn something and then come back and look at the same clients with a different eye. So we have to stay fresh as a teacher. And the only way you can stay fresh is not get more sleep, you need, of course, but it's about getting more information. You're the sponge, you soak up information so that you can go give to your clients. And that's what motivates it, because teaching's a lonely thing.
Yeah.
I mean, all those people in front of you will say they love you and all that stuff, but it's lonely because you have to motivate yourself. And it's always been like that. Even in the days of working with Alan, you know, you had to walk in and motivate yourself to give the best class ever. And it could be like Friday night at 7 o'clock and you think, oh, maybe they won't show. And you've just jinxed it because suddenly the door opens and they come in. And then you start planning their death because they've shown up. And it's like, no, these people, they're paying. It's the same as Monday morning. You've got to reach down inside and pull out the best class ever. Now, coming from a dance background, it was the same way we used to dance. You know, there might be 10 people in the audience, or there might be 1,000 people in the audience. You had to do the same performance. You had to pull it out and give the best. So I think, you know, teaching is lonely, but you have to have enough to start teaching. Then as clients will teach you more than anyone, because they will challenge you. Personalities will challenge you. I mean, recently I was teaching a class, and there was a lady, there's only 4 people in the class, and there was a lady, she's an opera singer. And she kept saying, I can't see you. Could you move? Could you move to the side? And I'm thinking, okay, I'll move to the side, you know? And then there was another lady yawning and watching a watch. I'm like, those situations, I can teach 300 people, Chinese people in a convention, and teaching 300 people is a lot easier than it was that day with these clients who are a little bit more demanding.
I bet it'd be nice for the listeners to hear you say that, because you get that, don't you, as a teacher?
I've had the worst clients in the world. You want to bring it on, share my story. I have had the most difficult clients, the rudest clients, you know, the people that think they know. My favorites is always the husbands that were sent in by the wives, you know, and they're like, I'm here, my wife wants me to be here. And I can make any grown man cry in 4 movements, you know, especially with a reformer, you know, and you need to show them they need it. But that journey never stops. And, you know, if you think you've got the worst clients, trust me, call me. Every one of those clients have taught me something about how to smile, even though you want to strangle them. Smile and say, okay, why they're screaming at me is nothing to do with me. You know, it could be they're having hell in their life, job, work, relationships, who knows? And you're the facilitator of movement. So you have to kind of block yourself and say, okay, I'm here for this. This is what I'm going to do. And not everyone will like you. There's some people who will definitely not like you. But it's for every person that gets it and feels better, you've done your job.
Take me back then to your time. You were at Alan's studio. How long were you there for? What came next?
Alan opened the first studio. Technically, I might not be right on this, but he opened a studio in Tel Aviv with a dance company, the Backdoor Company. And he opened a studio in Houston, Texas. And Alan used to spend several months going between the studios. The guy called Roderick McNeil, he'd put into Houston, suddenly got his green card and took off this glamorous job with like a Onassis or somebody like that. So they were suddenly left without somebody. So I was sent over to Houston, and this was early 80s, to run Houston Ballet Studio, because it was the Houston Ballet that I was working at. Now, I loved it. I mean, it was my first time outside the UK, British Caledonia. It was before they had ramps. You had to go up the steps. And when that door opened in Houston and this heat hit me, I was like, I'm home. As to growing up in the UK, where I was always cold. I was there for 3 months until they replaced, but I really wanted to stay. And they wanted me to stay as well. So, and I wanted to say, we got into the thing with Alan. I said, look, Alan, if I can't stay here, I'm going to come back to London and open my own studio, like a spoiled brat that I was. And so I did. I came back and opened Pineapple Dance Studios. It was just as Pineapple was opening. The dance centre in Covent Garden had closed overnight. And so everyone moved to Pineapple. And Pineapple became my life. And it was so much fun. I had a room, tiny room for all the apparatus. People would kick each other in the face. I mean, it was really small. But we had hot gossip in there, and it was kind of Wayne Sleep, and it was really fun. It was early 80s. Fitness was just taking off. Jane Fonda was out there doing her thing. And so it was great. After a couple of years, the Houston Ballet called me and said, look, we want you back. So I moved back to Texas for 10 years. So that was kind of the transition.
Did you keep running the Pineapple Studios?
No.
Did someone take that over?
No, one of my teachers, Christine Hocking, took it over first. And then I think Hannah Jones had it for a long time. And it was, I mean, as I say, Pineapple Days was the best. It was leg warmers and off-the-shoulder T-shirts, which they've still got.
So what was it like then when you moved back over to the States? What was that, a different vibe?
Yes. I mean, Houston Ballet was interesting because it was for the dancers, but morning class started at 9, so the dancers would always come in early. And then for the rest of the day, it was for the public. And coming to the ballet building for Pilates is certainly a law. I mean, Texas loves its culture, and everyone there was British, which was really, not everyone, but most people, Ben Stevenson, artistic director, Rosie Miles, Claire Duncan, who ran the school. So we had a very busy studio. There were 4 of us working in it. Every year we doubled the money. And so as far as income for the Houston Ballet, we were on salary. And all the things we don't get now, medical, dental, all that fun stuff. But during that time, I also started teaching aerobics for the YMCA. And so I'd sneak off and do aerobics quite a lot, actually, while teaching for the ballet. So I had fitness in my life, and Step came out. Jim Miller brought Step out, and I was at the first course for that. So I watched fitness grow. And to me, the two worlds were together, really, in my head. It's just they weren't together until really the late 90s. And then suddenly Pilates hit fitness.
Who was coming in the 80s in that studio then? Who was coming to those open to the public classes?
In Texas?
In Texas.
Well, it was a lot of the people supporting Houston Ballet.
Fine. So
yeah, it was a lot of the friends of the ballet type.
Because I feel like the only people I ever hear of who did Pilates in the really early days, they were all dancers.
No. These were... It was interesting because for many years after I left, I'd go back and visit, and the clients were always the same. And some clients had left, and some had got older, of course. But all those clients were doing other things. They were playing golf, they were playing tennis, they were running. They came because they knew what Pilates was. But they all were from very varied backgrounds, from different jobs and different works. No. And I remember when the first place that had Pilates in a medical environment was the St. Francis Hospital in San Francisco. And when I went to visit there, the Houston Ballet sent me out. They wanted the best Pilates studio ever. So they sent me out to New York, where I trained with Romana and also with Carola, two of the original teachers. And then I went over to Los Angeles and worked with Ron Fletcher's teachers. And that's when I realized I knew this. Because when you teach, when you learn with a school, doesn't matter what school, you know what they know. But then when you get out there, you suddenly realize, oh, hang a minute, I thought I knew things, but there's this big tapestry of variation. And went to San Francisco, and there was a young dancer, Elizabeth Larkham, who now is quite a force in the Pilates world. She was working with Dr. James Garrick, who was the first doctor to put it into a medical environment. Now, it was a dance clinic in St. Francis Hospital, but they were literally in a hospital. So it kind of changed in the 80s and the 90s. In the 90s, I moved to LA and worked at a place called Voight, which was a fitness studio. But I was always doing Pilates in the mornings at people's homes, because back then, in the early 90s, everyone had a reformer at home or had a full studio at home. But it was Beverly Hills, so they had everything at home. So that was my life. I was teaching for Voight, teaching step and aerobics and other classes. And then there was my Pilates world. And actually where Voight was in La Cienega in Los Angeles, just down the street was the original Ron Fletcher studio. And that was taken over by a teacher called Maury Windsor. Now, I was going to the Fletcher studio, and Maury knew I had run Houston Ballet. So I helped her open her studio back then in Los Angeles, which I'd completely forgotten about until I saw her at a dinner at one of the conventions. So yes, it was a community, but it wasn't like a community today. I mean, there was just less of it.
Yeah.
You know, I remember in the UK when the first studio opened up in Edinburgh, you know, and then Manchester was like, oh, he's leaving London. So back in the days, if you wanted Pilates, you had to come to London. And you know, there were other people with studios in London at the time, but there was much less of it.
You've talked about, you know, working with Alan and then meeting all, you know, the elders and different training schools. How has that evolved your teaching style over the years?
It makes me a lot more relaxed. You know, people want things to be simple. I think it's in Dunning-Kruger. I think like there's a condition which the people that know the least are emphatic. Like, you must breathe in here. You must push away on these springs. You know, it's not that. You know, when you see different teachers, and these programs now, back then they weren't elders, they were just teachers. Today we refer them as legacy programs. So like with Fletcher and with Kathy Grant and with Romana, who obviously got authentic Pilates, they have differences that reflect who they were. And I think Glenn Withers from APPI wrote a really great article years ago for the Body Workers Journal, which is a great magazine. And he said, your background will determine how you look at Pilates. You could be a sports person, you could be a runner, you could be a dancer, a physiotherapist, but all of that background will bring your view of what the method is. Nobody's wrong, nobody's right. It's just different. I always tell my clients, if they're coming to me for the first time and they've done Pilates elsewhere, I said, listen, things could be different today. I said, the tapestry of Pilates is very much like yoga. You've got different styles of yoga. You've got the static positions, you've got the movement yoga. I said, and that's what Pilates is like. We've got different styles and it's all Pilates, just like it's all yoga. If you work on your own, you develop your style. And it doesn't really matter who you train with. So I don't like people using the brand names. I'm a teacher. That's just a brand. You are a Pilates teacher. You might have started your journey with them, or you could still be continuing a journey with them. But ultimately, you are your own style. And I think the only time that you have to reflect on that is if you go work in a studio. Because a studio has to have a system. It has to have a style set by the owner or the teacher, whoever it is. And, a friend of mine in Latvia, she has a studio beautiful studio, and she hired the best teachers. Now, these teachers were for all the different schools. So it was a disaster at the beginning because they were all arguing about which way to breathe in or which way to breathe out or all of it. And I said, look, it's your studio. I don't care how they've learned. You have to tell them what you want in your studio. So when you're working in a studio, there has to be a system. Now, in our studio in London, I want teachers to thrive. I want teachers to have their personality, but I also want to have a system in there that clients can go from class to class and feel the same.
I'm in complete agreement. And I think it's that ethos, isn't it? You want them to be able to have their own personality and deliver the class in their way, but that you're not contradicting each other when you go from class to class, and people feel like no matter who they go to, that they're on the same journey. It's a question I got asked this morning, actually, when I told them I had 3 studios. That was the first question. They said, how do you make sure there's consistency with your teachers? And I've also got caught up with that, because it's all well and good to say, well, I'd love everyone to come from such and such a training course. That's often not realistic when you're trying to fill slots. But even when you have people from the same training courses, their own ethos is different depending on how they've picked up that course. So how have you brought that to life at your studios?
Well, we have meetings online because there's obviously logistics, and people don't just teach for us. It's London.
Same.
And so they teach in other studios. So we have meetings to talk about it. When we first started, I developed a manual for the studio, and I limited the movements until we knew who the clients were. I said, this is a new world. I said, these are the movements you can choose from. I always start off the reformer at the beginning. We do preparation, we do the reformer or tower, whichever one it is. And I said, these are the movements I don't want to see. These are the movements I see, until we know who we're dealing with. Because a lot of people coming to us were coming from the more dynamic studios, and they were jumping, going crazy. And I said, I don't want that. I want this to be technique. I want it fun. Goodness knows it needs to be fun, but I need to be about method. So if you want dynamic, I can give you dynamic, but you're going to do it with technique, which of course people can't. Recently I was in Lithuania, and there was a studio there that said, we want dynamic studio. I said, okay, I'll give you dynamic. And alignment, standing, control, we work with rhythm, go slow, go fast, goes fast. They couldn't do it, not holding the same position. I said, listen, you want dynamic, but you're not able to do it well. And that's unfortunately when we see people falling off the reformer or injuring themselves. One client said, my physio sent me to Pilates and my back's got worse going to it. I'm like, well, probably what you've been doing is not what you need. So for me,
this is the challenge I use, and the yoga analogy is one that I use as well. At least in yoga, they try and give them all different names. Whereas the challenge we've got right now is Pilates is Pilates, and yet there's a huge swathe of what you'd get versus your studio versus a more dynamic studio. But perhaps the marketing of that dynamic studio doesn't make it clear that it's fitness on a reformer, which is fun. And I've gone to those studios, but sometimes I do think, and I'd like to think I'm a pretty good mover and I can handle it. But I see beginners in those classes doing big moves as their first exercise.
Going back to training, I think when you learn the repertoire, You know, what drives me crazy is words like reinvented, inspired, I'm like, okay, you don't need to reinvent something that's working already. I mean, the Pilates method works. So when I look at Instagram, which I have to have a glass of red wine in my hand, because I see things being invented or performed. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, he's always naked or just shorts in LA, and they're always beautiful dancers in there, and they're doing it like incredible made up things. I'm like, that's not Pilates, but they look great doing it. That's performance. The danger we have then is the public see that thinking, I want to do that, and they don't have the same bodies. They don't have the same control, the same flexibility. They're not dancers. And I think that's where we get into a little bit of trouble. People are led or inventing new movements. I'm like, why would you invent, standing on a stability ball on your head on the reformer? I'm like, it doesn't make sense. What's the purpose of it? If you know the repertoire, which takes time to learn, because again, in the original Pilates studio, you were given some movements and you were only given more movements when you could do those movements well. Now, today, the clients come in and, what's new, what's new, what's new? They want different. There's a lot of window shoppers, I call them. And they're coming in and they're not getting into the shop and trying it on and seeing. They're just surfacing the movements. And so it takes a strong personality to control that. And I do actually think people from a group exercise background in fitness have got a skill which is great when it comes to teaching group reformer. And I think it's different. If you teach exercise to music, and you are getting people moving the same direction at the same time, that's a plus benefit of when you've got group reformer. I think, a physio coming to teach group reformer or a dancer even coming to teach group reformer, if they've not got that background of handling groups, then it's going to be a big challenge for them to actually make successful sessions. Going back to what Glenn said, everyone brings something different. If you have studios, there's a lady who's at the Reformer Convention, she's got 11 studios in Nottingham and Leicester. And I said the same to her. I said, we lose teachers every week. Unfortunately, it is money-based. And so teachers get offered more money and they will call me saying, we want to stay with you, but we have to go. I said, I get it. I completely get it. It's part of like children leaving home. The good teachers will always leave you.
Yeah. And
they will always move on. So what you always need to have, always looking at teachers. When I go on training courses, or I give training courses, I'm always thinking, who would I hire? Who would I hire? That's like listening to Shazam for music. When I go out, if ever I go out to a bar or restaurant, I would always have my Shazam, go, what song is this? I'm going to use this. What song is this? And it's a bit like when you're looking at teachers. This is a good teacher. We do a lot of resourcing. I work with a Turkish chain of hotels. We're just looking for teachers in Maldives, in Saudi, and there's always people coming to me looking for teachers. And it makes me laugh because I think, I'm looking for teachers too, for London. But it's tough.
I think it's interesting. There's more teachers now, I suspect, than there ever has been, but there's more studios. So there's, people are moving around a lot more. Talk me through your method. Talk me through the MK method. What's the philosophy behind that?
Well, the philosophy is, the whole concept is give movements that people need. We were talking about this morning. The movements you like are usually the ones you don't need. The movements you don't like, they're usually the ones. I mean, Pilates did not have a smartphone and Pilates did not have a computer. It's not that Pilates has changed, it's that we've changed as individuals. The postures of today are not what Mr. Pilates was facing. So with our friends in the classical world, I think knowing classical is essential, but then adaptation is where we live. Whether you call it pre-Pilates, whether you call it modified Pilates, the postures I see and the clients I see with all different types of conditions. So I think a good teacher is a thinking teacher. I want thinking teachers on their feet. You need to know the body, but then more importantly, how the framework of Pilates, how are you going to use that framework to really create effective programs? And the program can only be effective if you're going for the postural challenges. As I tell my classes, my goal as a teacher is to find the muscles you're not using. When we get out of bed in the morning, our body goes, okay, it's time to get out of bed. You always use your stronger muscles all day. If you sit behind a desk, your body's going to remember that. My method is, I know Pilates, I've been doing it a long time. I know the different styles of classical. But for me, I want to inspire teachers to be thinking teachers that work with who's in front of them. Now, group class has always been challenging. You've got different postures. One-to-one, you can really design a program for that person's needs. So I would say, the 100's the 100. But the challenge is, do it head up or head down? And finding ways to convince the clients, as I say, those husbands sent in. I always say, what do you know about Pilates? And one said to me once, isn't it like for old people and injured? I said, let's see what you think in an hour. So when he finished it, and I wiped him out, because I targeted the weaker muscles, because really I could have a professional basketball player right next to a grandmother, and they're both feeling difficulty for different reasons. So when he finished the sessions, I said, now what do you think of Pilates? He went, those old ladies are strong, aren't they? So I think for me, I'm still learning. And when I learn things I want to share, I do a daily blog, and it's things you'll never get taught on a course. I look for things that can help us as teachers grow. And I do that, and I'm searching, listening to blogs and listening to podcasts, and I learn every day something. And I think that is a great way to put your mind into. I mean, you can only do the 100 so many times. After that, we've got this template for mat work, 34 movements, 36, the extra 2 from PMA. It comes a little bit more challenging with the Reformer, because there was no official book like there was on the mat work. But looking at what Mr. Pilates did, and Mr. Pilates always taught only in parallel. So when he died, Romana took over the studio, she added the rotation, because she's a dancer. So if you really look at what he did, there were very few foot series. Of course, it was quite aggressive, the way he taught back then, but it was aimed at really the postures then. So head up, great if you're hyperlordotic, but if you're kyphotic, head up's not so great. My philosophy is thinking teachers. And it might drive people crazy, because when they come to us to train, I don't give them templates of class plans. I said, look, you're going to design that class. And that's why back in 2002, OCR came to us and we had the first level 2 course. They took our mat work 1. Then in 2005, we created the level 3 course. But level 3 today is not what we originally designed. It's kind of...
Well, this is the challenge, isn't it?
Diluted.
It's the challenge of an unregulated industry where anyone can write a course, which has its pros and cons, but you have got some of these accreditations that you can do. But as someone who's written a course, I feel very confused. Like, how do I get it accredited? How do I make sure it's with the right one? My course is comprehensive. I don't believe there is an accreditation for that. And then if I think I'm in this world and doing all my research and confused, it must be very difficult for people looking to train and trying to figure out, who do I train with and what is a good course? Because as you said before, if on that course you're being told this is the depth of this, you think that that's what this world of Pilates is.
Yeah, we have standards in the industry. The problem we have is you don't have to need that standard. Like all the fast dynamic studios do their in-house training, and they're not parts of the national framework. So we have level 3 and we have a level 4. We have now level 3 Reformer, which is great. I mean, I'm behind standards because, as I say, back in 2002, we gave our mat work to be a national standard for the level 2 Pilates. I've always been for standards, but where we're in this challenge at the moment is with all these studios opening up and not obviously sometimes not even assessing the teachers, just giving them training. They're the challenge, not the qualification. The qualifications varied. Active IQ, YMCA, we've worked with both for years. They have challenges because the people normally managing those qualifications don't really know Pilates. The people coming and visiting us, external verifying us, often don't know Pilates. So there's definitely challenges in our system. But let me tell you, compared to other countries, what we've got here is great. The only things that's comparable is like Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Those are the countries that have got standards. Now, some things come in, like Italy's just recently started with, you have to have this national course. Turkey, the Gymnastics Federation own Pilates, so you have to do their course to be official. So there are things out there, but not like what we have. And it's a bit like the NHS. There's problems with the NHS, but we have it, where you go to other countries that don't have that. So I think we have to remember that, yes, there are challenges what we're doing. We have an organization called the Society for the Pilates Method, and all the oldest companies came together to be part of that. And we definitely can accredit your course, because that way then you can be part of what we're trying to do, which is raise the level. Yeah. We're not there to control Pilates at all. What we're trying to do is to encourage, shall we say, the training providers to give more comprehensive training. rather than just quick, fast courses, because we don't think that's fair on the person paying for it and also for the public, you know. And the other company organization I work with, the EMD, which is the governing body for group exercise, they did a research paper, but I think it was 30,000 people, some big number of people they questioned, and 90% of the responses, they were amazed you could be working in a fitness club without a qualification. They just presume, because people always say to me, nobody ever asked for my certificate. Because they think if you're in there, like going to the doctors or hairdresser or anything, that you've got a qualification behind you. So I think there's challenges, definitely, but I refuse to stop, because after all these years, I keep getting these lifetime achievements. And a lifetime achievement basically means you've done enough, give over, let the young people take over. And I said, it doesn't matter how many lifetime achievements you give me, I'm not finished, because I've made many mistakes. Opening studios in the wrong place, hiring the wrong teachers. I've done all of that. So I want to share with as many people what I've done wrong. And I think that's the most important thing, you know, to have a purpose. Yes, I'm involved in the qualifications, I'm involved in the society and also with EMD. And that's great because those people can change things. EMD is a government-backed organization and they can 100%, and they're for the teachers. Where SIMSPA, the other organization, is more for the clubs. EMD, if you have a problem with an employer, you know, if you're a member of them, they can do so much. You can get grants for training. You know, it's a great organization that nobody knows about, really. And I think that's, again, part of, if you're working for a studio, you're with the studio, but if you're a freelance teacher where you're going all over, it's a lonely life. You need support. So I would say if you are teaching already, just check out EMD and check out us, the society, because as I say, we're not trying to control anything. We want Pilates to thrive, we want the teachers to thrive, and we want studios to thrive, because then the method continues.
We were talking before we came on air actually about being a studio owner and about one of the challenges around the finances of it, in that I think the statistic is that 80% of studios aren't profitable. And that's a huge issue, isn't it? And I definitely, in my early days, when I had my first studio, I was definitely part of this, where the studio looked like it was booming, but there was very little money at the end left over for me.
Usually the teachers get the most money.
The teachers all got paid.
Yeah, but as owners, you know, you didn't.
Is it possible to have studios that are profitable?
Yes, I think you need to get the right recipe. And at the end of the day, it's not, there's one of the countries we go to, Bulgaria, who we've got a training school there. People buy the most expensive machine, thinking that's going to make a good studio. And yes, it looks pretty, but it's not what makes the studio. I think the apparatus is your tools. I think you need to get the right place. You need to have the right marketing. You need to know who your clients are. I think if you're going to do group reformer, then that's definitely a different market than if you're going to be more comprehensive and have the apparatus and dealing with people with conditions. To be honest, the money's really in people with problems. You know, I think it's a competitive market with the reformer studio now. So you have to be different. What's going to be unique about your studio? It could be you, it could be your background. It could be the sessions, you know, there's no wrong or right, but like anything, you have to have it mapped out. And marketing, unfortunately, is, if you're the studio owner, often you have to do everything, including the marketing and the accounts and all of that fun stuff. And, you know, and then you have to manage the teachers. So it's not a walk in the park. What gets me nervous sometimes is when somebody says, oh, I'm opening a Pilates studio. I had this recently. I said, oh, great, you know, but I'm not going to teach. I'm going to hire teachers. Well, okay, how's that? Now, if you don't know what Pilates is, it's a bit like opening a restaurant. Well, you can't compare it because you need to eat, but opening a business where you don't know the business. I said, you really need to roll your sleeves up, get in there, and listen, I go out, I eat in restaurants, I go to hotels. I can tell instantly in any hotel if the staff are trained correctly, or in a restaurant. And it's all about the management. You know, if you've got good management looking after the staff, whatever the business of the service industry, you're going to do well. It doesn't just happen by magic.
No, and I think we've had a few studios open up near us. They're being run by non-teachers. I think if you're not passionate about why we're doing this is going to be a tough road for you. You know, it's not a get money, it's going to get rich quick scheme. Also, what I see in those studios, you talked about it earlier, is they just let any teacher with a qualification come in. So every teacher is vastly different. There is no ethos, there is no philosophy, there is no consistency. I even had one of our graduates say that a studio came to her and said, can you plan my class programming? And she came to me and said, Nic, I've just qualified. I don't know, like, where on earth would I start? I was like, you know, asking someone like that to lead what the classes are called and the leveling and all of that. So, yeah, I just think you've got to be passionate about this to kind of have, you know, it's great for you to share that you've also had those challenges. Like running any business is tough, but if you really love what you do, you'll evolve, you'll pivot, you'll figure it out because you're like, I've got a mission of what I'm here to do. I just think those studios won't last that long.
Well, I think it's the same as education. I mean, I teach clients every day, and that keeps me connected with teaching. So I would say if you're going to look for a training course, make sure whoever's giving that training course has got the hands-up experience of looking after clients. I mean, recently I saw somebody who had just learnt the Reformer and then went straight on to teaching the Reformer after never teaching any clients. I'm like, really? Yeah. For me, knowing how to adapt this for clients, then you can share that with people learning. You know, otherwise you just learn the movements. And a training course should teach you how to adapt, not just the movements. The movements, yes, you need to know that. But then it's the adaptation of it. And it's definitely when you start working with people with problems, then you really need to adapt what you're doing. It's not about what Mr. Pilates did, in my opinion. But of course, the classical world will be pass out of those comments. I remember years ago, I made a comment on an interview. I said, I respect the classical, I just don't have classical clients. Yeah. And then it was like, meow! And people like, how can you say that? You need to, no. Listen, I watch people talk all the time about, you know, learning modified and then going over to the classical world and thinking again, I'm born again. I'm like, yeah, we all did that. You know, that's just part of it. You know, going to a different teacher, going to a different school is going to give you, you know, a different feeling to it.
And I think that's great. Like, it's great to be, like you said before, like the tapestry of what Pilates is. Like, it's good, isn't it, to challenge yourselves in different ways. I think the word classical now is getting misused, though, because lots of the dynamic studios are saying we're not classical, meaning we're not, I don't know what you
We're not method. No, yeah, it was used always as marketing. It's almost like I'm more pure than you are, you know. And Lolita San Miguel, who's still teaching in her 90s, I have this on video with her saying it to us, you know, I love classical art. I love classical music. There is no such thing as classical Pilates. I don't care who you are. You did not train with Joseph Pilates. She did.
I know. That's great to hear that.
So for saying, in her words, there is no classical Pilates, it is used as a marketing term. And it's almost saying I'm a better teacher than you are, which drives me crazy. Because, yeah, I'm a classical teacher. I know the classical, but do I use the classical? No. You know, I have to modify because of the clients. Yeah. You know, moving to Scotland, as we did last November, what I learned about the area I'm in, which is a bit of a surprise, is that if you want a business, you have to buy the building. That's a whole new thing. Oh. I was like, yes, it was a bit of a surprise because we've always rented, leased, you know. So we're now in the community centre, have a small room with one reformer tower, and I'm Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm back to back with clients. And there's always people coming in with conditions that can't come to the group class because we do group classes as well. But again, you know, I love that because it's taken me back after years of working with dancers, you're working with professionals for their body, football, whatever, basketball players in Turkey. Suddenly I'm dealing with people whose bodies are not moving. And I think that's really exciting. Challenging, yes. Am I tired? Oh my God, yes. But that motivates me to be a little bit better because when somebody comes in and just having not just one condition, but at least 2 or 3 conditions, I'm like, okay, this is going to be testing me. And even after 47 years, it tests me. To get out of bed every day and then do what you have to do and then to go to bed at night, you have to feel good about what you're doing. And it is a vocation. You know, we love the method. I can't imagine doing something else. But I think then people need strength training, they need cardiovascular training. And one of the podcasts I was listening to recently, they say, you know, there's suddenly these experts on longevity at 30 years of age. Really? Are they really the experts at 30 years of age? Shouldn't we go to the 60-year-olds who have got there? They're the experts on longevity. And so I think we are influenced a lot by social media. I'm obsessed with TikTok. I absolutely love TikTok because I think the dancers, the singers, the creative people on there are amazing. I would never get to see these people. Yes, there are 3 million cat videos, which I love, of course, but it's the talent that you can see. I also like TikTok Shop, but that's a whole different story.
TikTok Shop is actually great.
Mate.
I remember the first time I bought, I said, is this going to be awful? And a friend of mine was like, no, it's actually brilliant. And it's brilliant. I've got so much stuff from it.
Well, Malcolm, my husband, he goes every so often, you're banned. Because we have TikTok Shop arriving every day. Because when I see it, I'm like, I need that. But then I think, as I say, the social media is great. It's very powerful. For what we see happening in Palestine, what's happening in the US, we see lots of information we wouldn't normally get to see, which I think is important. But I think also it's a place where you can see a lot of things which are not really Pilates. A couple of people I follow, Pilates Snob, I like her.
I like her.
She makes me laugh most days. Sometimes there was somebody in a group class sitting on the foot bar with the legs under the carriage, and they were doing sit-ups, but not just sit-ups, all the way back, coming up. And she was like, what? Are you doing? This is the inventions. People are trying to be different, but what they're missing is the body only changes doing simple things every day. So it's not about the dramatic. It's not about doing cartwheel into splits, landing on the reformer. That's not what's going to change your body. If you can do that, you don't need that. It's the simple things. It's the footwork. Maybe people say to me, do you always do the footwork? I'm like, oh my God, yes, because it starts at the feet. And the footwork is a great place to calm people down, get them into the room, centered. And guess what? It's actually amazingly what's going on above the feet. So I think doing that, simple things. In fact, most classes I teach, I don't do the rotation because parallel is going to give you better connection with the glutes, and we need good glute strength and good alignment. So if I do the rotation, I call it playing. Yes, we need the rotators, but do we really need them? Or, if somebody walks in like a duck, I'm like, I don't think we're going to be a rotation today. Let's stay with parallel. So I think the movements give you opportunities to change bodies, but you have to choose the right movements.
But I always joke with students that, when they're on a course and we're then learning the depth of this work and the most simple movements, they start really thinking about them and embodying them in a deep way. And they're like, whoa, there's so much going on here. And I said, you're not going to see this on Instagram because it doesn't look sexy.
No.
The sexy stuff, like when you can do that, like you said, it's just performance. The things that change, and they're like, oh, I get that now. I was like, but this isn't sexy for Instagram. But it's trying to get that message out there, isn't it? In your 47 years, you've worked, like you've been saying, places all over the globe. Is Pilates the same? Do you feel like it's different in different places? You've opened studios, you've trained there. Like, what do you see globally?
Sometimes I felt like the missionary going out there because, again, whoever goes into that country first kind of sets the style. So if it's one of the big brands, suddenly that brand becomes the country style. But there's several things that I remember. Years ago, I went to Korea for the first time, and I was doing a tour for Nike, actually, on empowering women in Asia. It was very glamorous. We did business class, nice hotels. And I went into one gym. I wanted to see what was going on. And there was a group class going on, and everyone was kind of jerking their legs. And there was a teacher with 2 sticks. And I was like, oh, wow, what's that class? They went, that's Pilates. And I went, really? Now, this is early days before I've been to Korea many times since then, and there's a lot of good quality Pilates there. And then there was one lady I always remember as well. She came to India, but she was living in Tibet. And she had a little village in Tibet, and she'd come and did the mat work course. So she went back to the village, and they hated it because they wanted to do aerobics. They wanted to move their bodies in this little mountain village. Anyway, she came back and she was like crying. She said, oh my God, they don't like it. I said, let's stick with it. People come around. It's like when you listen to a new song, at the beginning you go, oh, I hate this. And then eventually it's your favorite song. And so, of course, this happened. Suddenly the village loved it. Now she had the first studio in Tibet. Wow. So there are times when the other time was I went to Mexico in cartel country, and the cartel chicas, the ladies that the girlfriends or associated to them, they love Pilates, but they, nails, boobs, hair. And there was how many do we do with this? I said, however you want. Do I breathe in or breathe out? Whatever you want. Just tell your boyfriend you had a good time. And they had to clear the studio for these ladies coming in. And that definitely, those times, and going to India first, thinking, oh my God, everyone will know yoga. But then I went and taught the national cricket team in India. Nobody knew yoga. There's like one person doing yoga. So you realize that there's differences. Food's different, culture's different, language is different. But at the end of the day, people are the same. You know, they have postural challenges, they want to feel good, they have different lifestyles. And even the Japanese, who had the most amazing postures with traditional, because they had no backs to the chairs. Yeah. But now the modern Japanese have the same postural issues because they've brought in, you know, they're not doing that traditional way. I think it's everywhere. I have never been anywhere that there's not Pilates now. And again, some countries are very strong in mat. Some countries don't have mat, they only do apparatus. Argentina, oh no, we only have apparatus studios. I'm like, but he invented the reformer for the mat. They go together. And I try and explain in the original Pilates studio, it was all mixed. Yeah. There wasn't mat classes. You know, the first mat class that he was teaching was to a group of business owners in New York at lunchtime. That was the first record. And then, of course, he was at Jacob's Pillow teaching the dancers. It was all done in one room.
Yeah, because I heard someone say, you know, recently, oh, well, you know, mat work is the foundation. And I was kind of saying it. And then I was explaining this to somebody who's not Pilates. And she said, oh, it sounds like actually the comprehensive is the foundation. I said, yeah, it kind of is. You almost would say you need to do a comprehensive course to know the foundations and then go and do your group, you know, reformer or mat, which I thought was kind of an interesting. I thought, yeah, maybe you're right about that. But it's about making it accessible, isn't it? But the mat being the foundations of everything. Do you agree?
I would say everything on the apparatus is designed to train your body to do mat better. So mat, when it's what I call naked Pilates, which is you and the mat, no, I mean, with clothes on, but no ball, no ring, no band. That's honesty in movement, is when it's just you and the mat. And things are easier on the reformer. Things are easy on the Cadillac. You know, if you do like the short spinal on the reformer, if you come back and look at the jackknife in the mat work, it's easier on the reformer because you've got the springs helping you. I tend to mix. I come on and off the reformer. And definitely beyond the reformer, you know, what you do on the reformer has to have a purpose. You know, it's an unstable surface. So you're challenging the body. But if you've got poor posture or not a good pelvic position, then what you're doing on the reformer is not really going to be that beneficial. So it doesn't matter for me. I think both give you different things. I love mat class. I love it. Well, over the years, I've gone through hating things and loving it. For years, I hated the ladder barrel. Now, of course, it's my best friend because the ladder barrel, I just love it for what the clients need. And the same with the Wonder Chair. Wonder Chair, it was made for home use. It wasn't made for studio work. So it was the first home piece there was. And yes, there's limitations, you know, but again, for the guys going skiing, you know, doing the standing work on the Wonder Chair is a great prep work to get those global muscles working. I think having a full system gives you more options. Yeah. Because I do mat on the Cadillac, I mix it, I'll try the movement, even like plank on the floor, and then put the plank on the Cadillac, on the reformer. You know, I try and learn the position before the instability of the reformer happens. But I think the whole system is everything.
Everything.
And I don't like to split it and saying mat's better, reformer's better. I would say it should be done together.
Yeah.
Really.
In an ideal world, then you know the system.
No, and that's classical.
Yeah. And
actually, really, the classical is, because in the original studio, there was photographs around the studio that the clients could follow, because you had to learn your Pilates. And the great stories of Pilates throwing people out the studio. Although, you know, he did smoke cigars all day teaching, and he drank beer whilst teaching. And in fact, the ladder barrel and the spine corrector are made out of the beer barrels. That's how they came about. So I say to those classical teachers, well, so you smoke cigars? Or you drink beer whilst teaching? And then
wear white pants.
Well, there was also a shower in the corner of the studio that every client had stripped down to their underwear at the end of the session, and it was a cold shower, and they had to scrub their body. And it was, you know, he was German, it was all about circulation. And so I always say, if you go to classical studio, where's your shower? Because that's what you have to have. You know, people like things to be simple. And unfortunately, they can't be simple because people's bodies are not simple.
Yeah.
That's the challenge we've got.
I've loved here. I mean, it's just been so amazing to learn, you know, the history of, not just your history, but the history of Pilates in the last sort of nearly 50 years. What's exciting you? Because I love that you're still really fresh and excited and present in this world.
Fresh, I'm not sure.
Energetically fresh.
Yeah, there we go.
Energetically fresh.
It was a very early morning train this morning.
But what's exciting you about the future of Pilates?
I think I'm scared and excited. I don't want Pilates, you know, coming when Jim Miller brought out Step, it was wooden benches, and it was really good originally, although there were 3 people per step. And then they brought the Step company brought out that. And then a guy called Kenneth Cooper in Dallas came out with the research. I mean, we were running up that step originally, doing aerobic music. And then suddenly Kenneth Cooper brought out 124, 26 beats per minute. Then over the years, in fact, I just recently started teaching Step online, which is...
I'd go, but I was a Step instructor, and I was thinking recently, God, Step and aerobics, they were so good.
Well, I'm doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. Come join me.
You?
It's just 30-minute class. We do mat class at 10 online, and everyone has their Step at home.
So what's brought you back to being excited about that again?
Because I think the body needs more than Pilates. I think I walk every day, which is great, although I'm very weather dependent. I don't like walking the...
Now you're in Scotland.
And now I'm in Scotland. I'm like, I've got every rain thing you can get. But I think your body needs more things. And definitely, you know, walking's great for the pelvis, for the spine, fantastic. But I think a little bit of cardio boost 3 times a week. I haven't worked up to the rises. I've got my Step on the floor at the moment, but I will work it up, and we will get to an hour class. We're just doing 30 minutes class at the moment. I think it's good. It's good for the body. You know, I think like anything with what we're learning about nutrition or about what the body needs, longevity is VO2 max and strength training, and mental health. That's longevity. You know, movement is the most important thing. So anyway, I'm excited that I can still do what I can do at my age. I'm 66 now, which I know everyone goes, oh my God. In fact, I got really excited this morning on the train because they asked to see my rail card. When they don't ask, you must look it. And I said to him this morning, I said, thank you so much. I said, well, I obviously don't look it. If you have to see my rail card, that means you don't believe I'm over, you know, that age. The thing about getting older is you don't feel it. I mean, definitely the body changes. And in fact, I usually make people cry in a training course when I said, you know, after the age of 30, you start losing 1% of muscle mass every year. And that's why most professionals stop around the age of 30, because our bodies start changing. What you do between 30 and 50 sets up your body after 50. And definitely now, you know, in my 60s, I love that I can still do what I do. And people still want it, you know. We didn't move to Scotland to teach. And I was going for coffee mornings at the local village hall because they've got good cakes. So I'd go there, meet people, because I live on a farm with nobody, just cows and sheep. They're not my cows and sheep, but they're there. And so the community, you want to meet people, you have to go places. About the second meeting, one lady said to me, I've Googled you. I know who you are. We want classes. So we started classes and it's gone crazy. We've got 200 clients now, which never has happened because there's very little Pilates in that area. And I love that. Now they're older clients, so they're coming in, they can't really get down to the mat. So we do a lot of chair stuff, but it's fun. You're making people feel better. And if I can do that, if I can still keep teaching, making people feel better, then that gives me a sense that when I go to bed at night and put my head on the pillow, that it's been a good day. You know, you're changing. And as I said earlier, not everyone will like you, but you will connect to some people and then you will change their life because you change their body. The other thing, of course, is I tell teachers, it's not what they do with you, it's what they do in between. So giving homework, which again, locally, everyone's doing their homework. I'm like, I've never had this. I tell them to do something like stretching between their toes with a pencil, and they all go home and do it. I'm like, oh my God, they're doing it. No, I think it excites me that I can keep doing what I'm doing. Although we do laugh in the industry, we say, look, with Lolita, who's in her 90s, Mary Bowen, who's well in her 90s, Alan, who's in his 80s, they're all still teaching. You know, the Pilates teachers cannot stop teaching. They just go back to the mat one day and don't come back up. So the last breath out is going down to the mat, and then that's it. You're finished. So when people in other industries say, oh, I'm retiring, I'm like, oh my God, we can't retire.
No.
We just have to keep
going. And what does your world look like now in terms of, you know, you talked about your teaching. Are you still mentoring? Are you still educating? Like, what does the world of Michael King look like today?
Well, we have training centres that deliver our programs. We've got, I think, 30 training centres in 29 countries. Probably a few more now because we've got more in the UK. That deliver our programs. Obviously, I can't do all the courses. I run the courses myself, like in London when we run the Reformer course. So I've got that still going on. The training courses is still definitely going on. And supporting some of our centres, we have to fly and give the course because they don't have tutors. Others have got tutors, so they're a little bit more self-sufficient. But I'm hoping I'm going to do less travel. There's some things which I love to go to, some conventions, like the Pilates Gathering.
Yeah.
Bring me back next year. But there's other things which, it's hard. Travel's hard. It's a battleground. Flying from Bristol the other day, I was like, how many people in this airport? It was a 7:00 flight and there was nowhere to sit down. And by the time, it was EasyJet. Everything was calm and got me to Glasgow. And it was actually, compared to some, it was fine. It's when you get very large people next to you, you can't sit in your seat, or children doing this to the back of your seat. It's a battleground.
Yeah.
People always think it's glamorous, and it's not. It really isn't glamorous. But the students are what makes it worth it. When I get somewhere, always, the students, the courses are great. It's just getting there. And sometimes the hotel is not so great, those kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But people say to me all the time, I don't know how you do what you do. And I'm saying, well, I just do it. When I can't do it anymore, and they nail the coffin shut, then I'll have a rest.
Michael, we always end the podcast with a few quick fire questions.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Your favourite Pilates exercise and why?
It goes through stages. I hate one. I love the saw.
Oh.
I would say for my posture of my tight back, when I do the saw, oh my goodness, it just feels the best.
That's my nemesis. That's probably
But that's where you need it, yeah.
I always say that, don't they? The ones you don't like, you should do more.
No, don't. It's the ones you don't like, you need.
The best piece of advice you've been given?
Actually, it was really good. Somebody said to me once, don't focus on what people can't do. Focus on what they can do. And I worked a lot. I've worked with people in wheelchairs, I've worked with blind, I've worked with people in hospice. And so I've been in different environments. And it's a good thing to take with you. Don't get, I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. Just look at the person and think, what is it that they can do? And of course, what is it they need?
A teacher who shaped your thinking?
Well, I have to go to Alan. Alan taught me more than I ever knew. And I found myself, coming back. He was on Plus Anytime one time. He'd been interviewed, and Christy, who was doing the interview, said, "Do you always do the 100?" And he said, "Certainly not." They said, "Why would I give a movement to somebody that they can't do?" So I think Alan, but then over the years, everybody, I've been so lucky with Romana and with Corolla, everyone, Ron. Ron was the most always a gentleman with me. He was quite known for his throwing you out of the course type of thing. Sternness, shall we call it. But I think I'm a collection of all the people I've trained with. And I think Alan started me on my journey, but then along the journey, I've been lucky enough to work with people, and I'm still working with people. I love taking a class. My big nemesis is yoga. I've always wanted to like yoga. Last time we went to yoga, we were staying in this very nice hotel, and I said, there's yoga class, let's go do it. Malcolm, my husband, he's very flexible. So the yoga teacher kept saying to him, fantastic. She was Italian. Fantastic, fantastic. And then she looked at me going, do what you can.
That would be me as well.
Yeah, so I'm like,
I think that's why I love Pilates.
This is not going to be the day I love yoga.
One thing you wish you knew early in your career?
Oh, wow. One thing I wish, the business side. I would say it's not the method on this one. I would say when you love something, you want everyone to love it. And I think I've made some big business in studios, some mistakes. And I think I realized that I thought I could make it work and ignored advice. So I would say, if you're going to open a studio, or you're thinking of it, listen to the advice.
Your passion only carries you so far. Michael, it has been an absolute honour to sit with you. Thank you so much. If people want to work with you and they're interested in working with you more, how can they do that?
Well, they can find me on any social media, even TikTok, with MK Pilates. But the best way is we have a website called myacademy.pro, and that is our platform for MK Pilates and for other programs. Bar, other movement methods. I love bar. Bar lifts your butt up, let me tell you. So yes, find me on social media, send me a message. That's the best way to get in touch with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great to chat today. I feel like I've learned so much.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Michael King. It was such an honor to sit down with someone who's been such a huge part in the history of Pilates and who continues to inspire so many teachers all over the world. A huge thank you again to Michael for being so generous with his time, his stories, and his wisdom. I think what's been amazing is how big this community's grown, how many of you are listening. And now I'm getting other people from my wish list, like contacting me to say, could they be on the podcast? And that's all thanks to you sharing our stories on your Instagram, telling your fellow teachers and Pilates lovers about us. If anything resonated with you from today's episode, do drop me a DM or comment on one of the clips. Like, it really makes my day and I love hearing from you. So thank you truly for being part of Beyond the Reformer. This is all of us doing this together, and I'll see you next week for another inspiring conversation on Beyond the Reformer.